So January, February, March, what can we expect to reliably catch in your area?
In January, February and March tends to be a quieter time, but actually some of our local anglers, myself included, actually quite like after Christmas. You get different species. There's a lot more flatfish. We get flounder if the weather conditions are right, i.e. if we've had an onshore blow, which you get in the winter, and you get shellfish bashed up and washed up on the shore, then the flounders will come in big numbers, they can do, to feed on those shellfish. We get some dabs, we get some good run of dabs, usually from December right the way through till March, even April, sometimes they'll hang around, get some good sized dabs. I think sometimes those species, once the whitings start to tail off, once the codlins start to tail off, the bass have gone, then maybe those species get more of a chance to come and feed. And we definitely find that I think after Christmas is more of a, not so much a bonus fish as in a big fish. It's not for the big specimen hunter, but for the person that certainly likes to target certain species. Flatfish, I would say, predominant after Christmas, definitely.
We do sometimes get a run of codling again, don't we? Yeah, we get a few codlings sometimes that come through, another run of, like a spring run of codling, if you like, but it comes slightly earlier than spring, sort of February, March time. So that can be good. Again, for a few years we haven't had it, but we're hoping that will happen again this year. Next year, but this quarter. And I say, yeah, flounders, brilliant. Shellfish is the best bait, but we also get placed, don't we, later part of the season. And then that's quite exciting because we have had it where we've had a lot of place and dabs have been there together, and you don't know whether you're going to get a place for a dab, and that's particularly at White Horses. That was a really good venue for them last year.
It's been a species, place especially, has been a species that we've noticed a huge increase in the last probably 2, 3, 4 years.
Is that across Sussex?
I think so, yeah, and yeah, definitely. And as Kev says, it's not usually the time of year that you would expect them, but we do get them turn up. We can get them turn up in February and March, definitely, in quite good numbers and quite good size.
For the angler that's not really caught a good place before, what would you say would be the best conditions?
Well, generally you want the water not particularly too dirty. It doesn't matter if it's got a slight bit of colour to it, but it doesn't have to be absolutely coloured as it does for some of the other species. Generally there are areas that fish better. I mean, certainly if I was going to target place in this area, my preferred area would be the other side of Langley Point at a place called Splash Point. It's a very good venue for place, can produce some good place there and good numbers of place. You can get place all the way through.
For those that don't know Central Eastbourne, Splash Point, is that the bit that juts out just in front of the fortress?
That's right, yeah, that's it. That's what we call Splash Point, Cambridge Road, Splash Point, the Redoubt Fortress, all the same area. It does jut out, so it is, and also, as far as we're aware, it generally fishes better to guys who can cast medium to long range. It definitely produces better. I think there must be a mussel bed out there. I think there is a mussel bed at quite good range, and I think those guys that can knock a bait out quite a long way tend to be the ones that get more.
Produced a lot of flounders this year as well, didn't it? For the shorter range casting. The long range casters were picking up the place, but inside that there was a lot of flounders. I mean, I know someone had 11 and 10, and some of the place catches were big numbers, really good. And the odd sole you get there as well. It's unusual for that time of year. It's a rogue fish, but it's just a good flatfish spot altogether.
Yeah.
One winter species that appears quite prevalently in other parts of Sussex, and we haven't yet mentioned, is the rockling.
Yeah.
Do you expect to also see them here?
We do get quite a few during the winter season. Close range fishing. We do get quite a few. Funnily enough, not so many this last season. It seems to have thinned out over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Definitely not as many as there used to be. Match anglers love rockling, but everybody else not so keen. But at least it's another fish there that you get bites on. And
well, I'll tell you what we also find as well for rockling. I mean, I do feel sorry for the humble rockling, but from a point of view of novice anglers, and certainly from a point of view of junior anglers, there can be a very easy species to catch, and sometimes it's key to get juniors interested in angling. If they catch something, that's better than catching nothing. and the rockling can be a great species for them. Flounders, rockling, short range species. We're quite lucky here that if you do fish at short range, certainly in those months, you can, if the rockling do come in numbers, then the junior angler or the novice angler can at least go down there and catch quite good numbers of fish.
So if you are dragging the poor wretched kids out in the freezing cold temperatures, a little bit of worm for the rockling?
Yeah, smallish hooks, lugworm's as good as anything you'll catch. In this particular venue, because it's a lugworm based area, it is generally the best bait to catch everything. But even old lug, a little bit of frozen lug, smelly lug will work for rockling and dabs. Doesn't have to be a really fresh bait.
Just on bait, and especially worm, are there any times of the year it's likely to be in short supply? I'm thinking maybe if you do have the hope for codling run when lug will be in even greater demand.
That's a good point, actually. We tend to find that we have a good supply of bait. We both dig ourselves as well, so we do tend to find that we have quite a good supply of local lugworm. But obviously, as you know here, the tide doesn't always go out. We have short tides and long tides. Now, obviously, on the short tides, you can't dig when the tide doesn't leave the beach, and so then we rely on frozen lugworm and ragworm. Our frozen bait is very good, actually. It's salted and oiled and done specifically for the freezer. So it's a very, very good backup bait, and we get some customers that come in that will actually prefer to take frozen lug over fresh lug, which is rare, but it's not unheard of, and it's quite common.
Especially cod fishing and especially dab fishing.
Yeah, definitely. But they will. I mean, certainly boat anglers as well, but beach anglers also will take frozen lug. It does work. So we tend to try and have good fresh bait most of the time. But obviously, when the tides are short, that's not so easy to get. And also, of course, if there is a particular run of a species, like we talked about earlier, if we do get a good run of codling, things can go a little bit hectic, and then it's really advisable if you're coming down to organise a trip on the south coast, make sure that you book your bait with a local shop, because otherwise you might be disappointed.
Moving on from lug to ragworm, I noticed you mentioned that for the smaller smoothhounds, rag could be a good bait in the summer for them. Do the rag occur naturally anywhere around here?
No, not really. I mean, you get ragworm in the harbour entrances and river entrances, but as a natural bait, it's not in this area. But actually, still does work through the winter months as well. I still take a bit of ragworm when I go fishing most of the year, because it does. When lugworm's not working or it's slow day, tipping with a bit of ragworm tends to pick out some other fish or find the extra flounder. So it's still a good bait, definitely, to have as a backup bait along with your lugworm, I think, don't you?
Once you're into October, November, December, I think lugworm is absolutely the key bait, but certainly through the summer as well, and after Christmas. So that period after Christmas, it can work for flounders, definitely it can work for rockling, but also through the summer it can definitely work for the sole, for the Dover sole, and for bass as well. So yeah, ragworm is a good alternative bait when lugworm is either in short supply, or just take it as an extra add-on to give you just an alternative bait to use.
Coming back to our calendar theme of moving through the year, January, February, March, does the fishing start to tail off later February, moving into March, like it probably does around the rest of the coast?
It does pretty much. I mean, once we get into March, we are lucky here. I say the flounders can run right the way through, and at the moment we're still catching flounders now in the summer. But the flounders can continue through, the dabs can continue through, but generally we do tend to find that sort of March and April time is a bit of a changeover time, where you're sort of losing even those winter species, and the spring summer species haven't quite put in a strong enough appearance. So you can get lucky, people still go fishing, they can catch fish, but generally we find that sort of March and April time is probably the quietest 2 months, I would have said, for quality fish anyway.
The strange thing is that we still get a few of those species, but they seem to be smaller. It tends to be a breeding ground for a lot smaller, the same fish, very small dabs, some smaller flounders, a lot of fledgling fish move in at that time of year, really.
Yeah.
So if you want to actually see a bite, it's a venue, but of catching something to take home and eat, a bit different. a lot harder to find the better quality fish. Yeah.
You just a little bit earlier mentioned April, so moving on to April, May, June, what would you say would be the species that are going to start moving into the beaches around here?
Generally expect to see the first of the bass turn up in April. Can get some quite good sized ones, but generally if the weather conditions, if we have an onshore blow, we get a nice dirty sea, a nice bit of surf running, especially in the shallow area through the bay, down to Norman's Bay and through Pevensey Bay to White Horses. Obviously being shallower, it's more likely to have a surf running at a low tide if you've got an onshore breeze, and the water tends to dirty up, so that's a good time to go shallow water bass fishing in those areas. You do get them up Laney Point, you do get them in the deeper areas, but yeah, we should start to see the first of the bass show if we get the right weather conditions.
My favourite time to fish them is, funny enough, a lot of people come down, they say, oh, when do you fish this venue? Is it all at 2 hours either side of high water? No, we love it at low tide, and just as the tide floods in across the sand, the water's colouring up, a couple of nice fresh outs on a hook, chop just over the back of the surf, and that's my favourite time to catch bass. It's lovely, especially as the sun comes up early morning if it's a low tide then, which it normally is on a spring tide. It's a great time to fish, and it's just, I love it. May, June, brilliant. Yeah.
Bass fishing is great because it's not the preserve of the long distance caster. It's, you know, anyone can catch bass. I mean, you can target bass, but certainly, you know, so many people catch bass. If you go down, as Kev says, short range fishing, anyone can fish short range. You know, young people, people who are not very good at casting, it's great if you get down there at the right time. Certainly at low tide, if you've got a nice bit of surf running, as Kev says, with a couple of decent big fresh out, that's live lugworm, big worm baits, lob just over the back of the surf, and anyone can catch them.
Just as a footnote though, fishing at low tide on the big spring tides, obviously there's mud venues and you can be cut off by the tide. So if you're going to do that, it's a great time to fish. Just pay attention to what's happening around you, like the tide coming in behind you. If you're outside on a gully, walk through to a bar, people do, they get cut off. I mean, you know, you can walk back through it, but if you don't want to get you wet or lose your gear or whatever, just pay attention. But do it because it's well worth it. Yeah.
So I take it then we've got gullies here that run parallel to the water.
Yeah, we do, and those gullies are great to fish into. You know, they produce fish, which is why we like, especially certain times of year, fishing at low tide, because you know, we have quite steep shelving beaches, but then it leads on to sand and gullies and sandbars and gullies, and those sandbars and gullies do go out quite a distance. And of course, if you're fishing at low tide and you're fishing back with the tide, you tend to find that you're fishing into those gullies and then on top of the bar and then into the gullies again. And those predatory fish, certainly in April, May, the predatory fish would be a bass. They run up and down the gullies. You know, they're feeding on shrimp, on small fish, on crab, and that's where they feed. They run up and down those gullies feeding on those fish if the conditions are right, or if the conditions are, the sea is quite coloured, then that's where they will feed in the shallow waters, running parallel to the beach, up and down the gullies.
And do we expect to see any mullet start showing with the warmer temperatures?
Slightly later, May, June, sort of June really, when the weather's warmer, we tend to see mullets start to come, particularly again round the rocks, around the harbours, up Langley Point.
Can you fish right inside the harbour, by the way?
No, not legally.
Are you okay though to fish on the rocky outcrop that's right at the entrance of the harbour?
People do fish it. The advice is really, they don't encourage it. The harbour authorities don't really want you to, in the sense it's potentially dangerous should something happen to you. There's no actual signs up or anything saying you can't fish it, and people do, but with caution. You have to be very careful if you are going to. I'm not advising you to go and do that because there's big gaps in the rocks, you could fall down, etc. But on the other side of the harbour, you have things like there's a sewer pipe and there's a load of boulders which are protected, sea defence boulders if you like, and sitting on those when the tide's up at high water, it's perfectly safe, flat rock, and you catch mullet from there as well. You see the mullet moving in all around those big boulders and rocks, and there are thick lips there which we fish with bread and float fish them, great sport, and by the harbour entrances and that, you do see thin lips sometimes caught on spinners with small ragworm.
Those fish patrol, they come out the harbour, they patrol close to the shoreline, out round the rock of in front of the sewer pipe. And yeah, I mean, if I was going to target mullet, then that's where I would go. That's quite a key area.
You've got, of course, all of those rocks at Beachy Heads. What would you say would be the species that you'd go there and target? Would it be mainly bass?
Particularly bass, yeah. You can, especially that time of year, sort of May time and June, you will catch bass. Predominant bait there's going to be peeler crab, really. And then as June comes on, you can fish them with lures and spinners. They catch bass off the rocks there, and as the tide floods in, and then at high tide they fish lures. Hollywell, which is the far end of Eastbourne seafront where the rocks are, and then right round to Cow Gap, as you say. Again, you've got to be careful, but yeah, crab baits are very good fishing at night, and as the tide floods in onto the gullies and the sand, fishing with crab. As a footnote there, you will occasionally pick up a few eels. There is eels in the venue through this time of year, April, May, but you must be careful because you have to return them alive, because the law's been they've been restricted because they've been in such poor supply over the last few years that there are restrictions, and any eel must be returned back to the sea alive should you catch one.
How well did he work that in, by the way?
Brilliant, yeah, very good, very good.
I was giggling to myself, I tell you.
You got the eel in, yeah.
That was excellent. Okay. So staying with April, May, June, are there any other species we could expect to start showing in the area? Sole smoothhounds, perhaps?
Yeah, late May and early June. As I say, we do get the first of the Dover sole show. Certainly late May, early June. June definitely a month. The sole start to show. They do generally start off small and then get bigger through the summer months. And then smoothhound, definitely. We have seen them as early as late May, but certainly once we get into June, smoothhound would be a species that we would expect to start seeing. They do tend to, again, start relatively small, though you can get quite decent sized ones, and then they get bigger throughout the summer. But certainly May and June, we will start to see Dover sole and smoothhounds as well.
So far, our theme has been what we can reliably expect to catch. Over the years, have there been any surprises, any turn up for the books at all?
We do get some other species, some slightly more exotic species. We do get tub gurnards and red gurnards. We do get red mullet.
They're in the summer generally, aren't they?
Generally summer months, but you start to see them sort of June onwards really, you'll see those through the summer. Black bream as well during the summer months, which we didn't mention, but you start to see them. We've already seen those through end of May, beginning through June. We've started to see some of this season, a lot of small black bream, but every now and then there's been some good ones caught. Sort of pound plus off the shore, particularly the bigger ones at Langley and along Eastbourne seafront. White horses you'll see, sizable fish, sort of up to sort of 8, 10, 12 ounces possibly. And then also a lot of little tiny ones. In fact, people get bites, not hooking the fish. It's actually very small black bream on particularly lugworm, lug
But we
fish,
do also, and we have seen it in the last few years, a very rare, or in previous years would have been a very rare catch, almost unheard of, but certainly not so now, and that is we do get gilthead bream occasionally off the beaches here. Generally the more deeper water venue, sort of Langley Point end, but we do get the occasional gilthead bream, decent size. So.
How about rays? We haven't spoken about rays yet. Do you get a run of thornbacks in spring or a run of summer stingers?
No, rays are the one species that we don't get here in any big size. It's quite unusual. They obviously spawn here. They obviously, because we're quite often through the summer months, as a bycatch, you catch an awful lot of thornback rays, small to medium size, smallback ray, but generally more on the small size. But we never, ever, in all the years we've been here, I've never heard of, never seen, never weighed a sizable ray caught from the beaches.
Except for a stingray.
Oh, stingray! I've never seen one though, but oh yeah.
Gerald had one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We have had a sting. I've seen one stingray and heard of another big stingray that was lost. I know Terry Allen that time. Yeah, big stingray lost. But generally, the rays we get are literally the palm of your hand size.
So no real chance of a big ray then, but you do have a good spread of other species.
And like I said to Kev, it's quite an amazing venue really, in that how many different species you actually get turn up through a 12-month period. If you were to fish the same beach over a 12-month period, you'd be quite amazed at just the number of different species that you could actually record from one particular beach.
2 years ago, we have a local club, Anderida Club, which we're heavily involved with, and we have each year we give a trophy for the most species caught by a club member. And I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, the winner had 23 species, second was 22, and the guy who came third had over 20, he had 21, I think. It was ridiculous, you know, and
that's sizable.
That's sizable. That's not many species. Yeah.
That's legal size species, and you know some people would be hard pushed to name 23 sea species that you'd catch off the beach. I mean that's phenomenal.
So a wide variety of fish to go at, and also variety in your marks. You've got shallow, sandy beaches in the bay, broken ground at Holywell,
Yep.
out and out rock
Yep.
at Beachy Head, a harbour entrance, a pier.
Outfall pipes, Alice's pipe, the one up at the point. Yeah, there's several out. One by the Prince's Park. There's another one. So yeah, a lot of outfall pipes that all can produce fish. So, again, mullet at the outfall pipes. That's another place we do get it. Actually, Alice's pipe we catch mullet sometimes, fishing off the end of the pipe there as the tide floods in when it's high. Yeah.
And there's actually good access to the marks as well.
Yeah, generally, very good access. Even here, we have a car park in Pevensey Bay where it's £3 all day parking in the summer and completely free during the winter.
Is that Sea Road?
Yeah, Sea Road, mate. Sea Road car
You
park.
can park right by the beach there, of course. You've got a good toilet block. You're just around the corner, a couple of 100 yards away.
Ideal, yeah.
And it produces.
And it produces fish, yeah.
Well, Glyn and Kev, you've been very informative. For us to know exactly where to go and what time of the year is, of course, more than half the battle. And you've shared so much of that local knowledge you have with us. So for that, thank you, both of you, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.